when it comes to the New York City as a city, what did it teach you?
You always have obstacles. The subway suddenly breaks down. You got to sit there for 10 minutes and, there's roadworks, or there's always something going on, creating tricky situations. And that means you have to constantly be practicing acceptance. I accept. Yes. Okay, great. And one of the things that being a spiritual practitioner, training the mind, as we do, that's like lies at the heart of it, of what we do, what it does is it's giving you this overall orientation, which is, today I'm going to train in being peaceful and happy and kind and compassionate. I'm going to practice applying Buddha's teachings to my life. In order to do that, I need difficulties. I need some things that are going to give me challenges. Otherwise, I'm not practicing. Otherwise, I'm just drifting along, Yeah. But if you get a challenge, like you go to the gym, you have to lift weights. You don't just stand there. You're lifting weights because that's going to strengthen you. So we need things that are sometimes a bit heavy emotionally, so to speak, that are going to challenge us in different ways. New York City never fails to deliver. And that means that you discover the creativity that lies at the heart of training the mind. How can I respond to this situation in such a way as to arrive at a peaceful, good heart, as opposed to going, this shouldn't be happening to me. How dare you say that to me? Mm-hmm. Again, rather than fighting the mind, you don't want to fight. The moment you start fighting, you've already lost. You want to recognize, oh, here's an unhappy thought coming up. If I follow it, I'm going to get angry. I'm going to say something stupid. That's going to get me into conflict. It's going to make everything worse. Again, all of this requires training to know this, and we need to learn from our mistakes. Yeah. But over time, you get better at kind of going, let's not follow that thought. Let's disengage. Let's not repress. Let's just disengage, create a bit of space. Oh, yeah, there's that peaceful mind again. Oh, there's that refuge, that inner refuge. There's that inner protection. And that inner protection is actually telling me, you know what? The fact that the train is late is good for me. I can use this. Look, I'm using it right now. I'm training. I'm growing. So I'm not getting to where I wanted to go as quickly as I wanted, but I'm getting to where I really want to go, towards lasting peace and happiness. And so, yeah, seeing every day as a wonderful opportunity to practice, very helpful.
Because you've been in New York for the last almost 30 years.
30 years,
Do you know, did you notice how the city was changing over time?
The city never stops changing. It's a city that eats itself because it's an island. So it can't expand. Uh-huh. So what it does is it just constantly, some buildings come down and then skyscrapers emerge. When I first arrived, the centerpiece of Manhattan is the Empire State Building. Beautiful, like legendary, iconic Art Deco building. You can hardly see it now because there's all these other skyscrapers around it, not nearly as attractive. So the city is constantly changing, morphing, eating itself in this sort of weird way. It's one of those things like you would meet New Yorkers and they would say, oh yeah, that used to be like this and this used to be like that. And now I'm the guy doing that.
And how about the people of the city? Because if you have, as a meditation teacher, you come to know the problems of the people quite closely.
Sure.
Was there a change within the people that you have noticed over this course of the 30 years?
When I first started teaching meditation, it was seen as something very unusual. Mm-hmm. Gradually, it became more and more commonplace until, with the sort of arising of the various meditation apps and so forth, and even the understanding that it's physically healthy as well as mentally healthy. Meditation went mainstream. Mm-hmm. But when something goes mainstream, it also gets watered down, you know. And so we might say that the kind of the spiritual dimension of meditation, the notion of really connecting to a deep inner potential, the notion of permanent happiness or enlightenment, all of that kind of vanished, you know. from the mainstream presentation of meditation. In other words, meditation was seen as something that would be very useful to add to your life so as to make your life a little bit better, with the house, with the family, with the good job, the exercise, the good diet, the dog, and a spot of meditation just to prevent you from going crazy, just to keep you on even keel.
Just to remain sane.
That's exactly right. So help keep you sane. And so meditation was seen as that kind of thing that it would be a useful thing to have in your life. Not an essential thing, but a useful thing, know. But it seems to me that in teaching Dharma now, in New York, it's really easy to basically give people the sense that the practice of meditation and connecting to the deeper experience in your heart that's available to us through meditation, like beginning to recognize your potential for a lasting peace and happiness and so on, that's becoming more relevant because people are really discovering that the dream of, you might say the American dream, but really it's a universal dream of a life that is working to deliver some degree of stable peace and happiness and harmony. It's not happening. It's not happening from the outside. The world as you experience it with an ordinary mind, as Buddha explained, is in the nature of suffering. It can't deliver lasting peace, lasting happiness. Applying Buddha's teachings to your life can deliver. But the thing is, you're only going to understand that applying Buddha's teachings to your life can deliver if you're interested in that. If you're holding out thinking the world is going to deliver it, then you're not going to be that interested in, you're going to maybe use it as a nice additional add-on, to your life. But to really invest yourself in transforming your heart, you're only going to want to do that fully if you understand that it's not going to work. Otherwise, you won't find the peace and happiness you long for otherwise. And so when you explain to people what Buddha actually taught, which is that the nature of an ordinary life, what we call contaminated life, a life that is conditioned by what we call delusions, disturbed states of mind, anger, jealousy, greed, attachment, a life that is conditioned by those minds, as our lives are, cannot possibly lead to the fulfillment of your deepest wishes, which is happiness, like a lasting happiness. Previously, you had to kind of persuade people about that. They wouldn't immediately accept. They'll be like, no, no, I disagree. I think you're being a bit pessimistic, that kind of thing. Now people are like, they just accept it immediately. They understand, because that's what they're experiencing.
And do you think living in the city like New York helps people to understand that more? That, the external world can't deliver the happiness that they seek, Because it's a place, I believe, I've never been to New York, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in the big cities you have all types of entertainment. I recently moved to London and it's like you're overwhelmed by the elaborateness, if that's a word, of entertainment. I mean, you name it, it's happening in the city, One place or another, you get exactly the pleasure or the joy that you want. But then you kind of exhaust yourself going those places and attending those events and doing those things. And you kind of connect with the truth. It's like, it's fun. It costs me money. I'm happy to pay. But is that what I'm actually longing for? Do you think being in a city like New York helps people to actually connect with that?
I think it can. It can help people to connect to that because, you get to experience all these different things and see that they don't deliver. They don't deliver in the way that you want them to deliver. But, it's very easy also to stay distracted, I mean, these days, entertainments are so expensive, that that adds on a whole other category to it, But it's very easy to stay distracted. But there is, I think, just culminated with everything that's going on, a kind of at least for the people coming to the center, a kind of awakening, like we need this. We need this. Yes, there's all these entertainments and there's all this amazing things to do to distract yourself with. But it doesn't matter who those people are, whether they're the successful ones or they're the ones who are struggling to make ends meet. Across the board, everyone is experiencing a lack of fulfillment. Everyone is experiencing unhappiness, insecurity, attachment, anger, a lack of satisfaction. And so it's a city that's full of striving. It's a city that's full of seeking. But it's seeking but not finding, as Buddha said, because we're all seeking happiness. We're actually seeking lasting happiness. But we're settling for temporary happiness. Entertainment, like you said. And the thing about entertainment is sometimes it's entertaining and sometimes
it's not.
It's very disappointing, Or like you could easily these days pay $1,000 to go and see a famous entertainer and then have some person jumping up and down in front of you and causing you to feel upset or singing loudly next to you so you can't even hear the actual singer and you're just getting angry, so you paid $1,000 to have a really unhappy experience, and so sometimes the entertainments work to deliver a short-term happiness, but that's as good as it gets. Mm-hmm. And then people keep looking and looking, trying to find that short-term happiness, and so that's something I really try to remember, and realize that my function there as a teacher of Buddhist meditation is to help open people up to the fact that if they want to find that fulfillment, it is actually possible. Mm-hmm. But it's not possible outside through arranging external circumstances. It is definitely possible on the inside. And that's where that experience of disillusionment at some point. Like at some point people feel like, well, I've done all this and I did this and I got to the top and whatever, and I'm still seeking but not finding. Some people conclude, well, that's just as good as it gets.
That's just life.
That's just life, and just carry on distracting yourself until you drop. But other people, they'll have like a kind of awakening, and they'll think, maybe I should seek something out. Mm-hmm. For example, I was just talking to a friend who's now also a teacher of Buddhist meditation. And he came to New York City. He's English originally, but he came to work in New York. Was successful job and so on like that. And his office was located 500 yards from the World Trade Center. And so he was there on 9/11, 2001. And for him, that was the moment of something changed inside, because he said he realized that, he was 500 yards away from this dreadful, tragic event where over 3,000 people lost their lives in an instant, and the sort of collapse of people's dreams. And he was explaining to me how he was in the middle of, preparing for this meeting. It was all about this meeting, and then he realized he could have died just preparing for this meeting. And for him, it was a moment of, is this it? And that's when he sort of opened up a process that led him to the center, and then that really clicked for him, and he started practicing and seeking happiness from a different source. as Geshe Kelsang would say, discovering that source in your mind, The real happiness cannot come about through manipulating external conditions. Some people conclude, well, that's because there is no real happiness, but our conclusion is completely the opposite. No, there's a completely pure and authentic and, in fact, lasting happiness that is available. And that, by the way, when you have it, when you begin to connect to it in your heart, just simply by learning how to allow your mind to settle, then you discover, oh, there it is. And when you nurture that and when you cultivate that, then that gives rise to a more consistent experience of peace and happiness. It doesn't immediately lead to lasting peace and happiness. That's a process, but a more consistent peace and happiness that you can then bring with you to when you go to entertainments. And so that even if the person is jumping up and down in front of you, you don't get overwhelmed because you're like, oh, well, I know where to find peace and happiness. Mm-hmm. I can bring that peace and happiness to when I'm enjoying things, but also when I'm not enjoying things. So you start developing like a very even state of mind that allows you to basically be peaceful and happy and go with the flow, and roll with the punches and basically deeply enjoy life. But life is a process of moving you towards the thing you're really looking for, lasting peace and happiness and freedom, and eventually to be able to help others to do the same.
And how is the development of the meditation center in New York from like 30 years ago, when you have been in this dance studio on a dodgy side of the street, to where you are right now?
Well, it's a process, right? So I would say that we followed kind of like a model. So that, I was giving a lot of classes in different parts of town, but we were working towards what we call a residential center so that a few people could live together and practice and make that sort of the heart of the center, where people could then come. And so we realized that would not be possible in Manhattan because we were just a small group to begin with, but we found a small little residential center out in Brooklyn, in a not particularly fashionable area, now very fashionable, by the way, but back then, not so much. And after a couple of years, we were able to move to a townhouse, again, just renting residential center, but we packed it full of people. And Geshe Kelsang came and visited during that time. But at a certain point, it became clear to me we needed to be in Manhattan. This was all in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. So we needed to be in Manhattan, in the center, in the hub. And it would not be possible to create a residential center just for practical reasons. And so it became really clear to me we needed a commercial space. Mm-hmm. We needed to find some office space that we could then use as a center. And a long search followed, and actually it was in particular somewhat as a result of 9/11 that happened. That day that we ended up with this rather excellent space for us on the 5th floor initially, and from there eventually, and it took a bit of time, we graduated to being able to then purchase our own space on the ground floor, right in the middle of a very busy and well-known area, the Chelsea district on 24th Street. And we have a big meditation space that can hold about 300 people. We've got a second meditation space. We have a big reception area and bookstore. We have this wonderful, it's not an outdoor space, but it's what we call an atrium. So it's like a glass ceiling where people can kind of sit.
And that's in the middle of the city,
it's
right?
It's right in the middle of the city.
So it's like an oasis. People can just come in and...
People can come in whenever they want. We do meditations morning, noon, and after work. There are classes every day. It's become full on, and we have a large membership, and just a lot of people attending classes. I mean, there's, I can't remember the exact, but it's essentially 1,000 people walk through the center every week, and so from one point of view, it's going very well. From another point of view, it's a city of essentially 10 million people. So we're still a drop in the ocean. But to me, it's all about, the key was to build it up organically and to really make sure that we were having a really meaningful and joyful time together, so that you create a community and that where people have experience and compassion and love for one another. And, that's what people tell me they feel when they come into the center. That this, and that's why I think one of the unique characteristics of New York City versus perhaps quite a few other places is that by and large, so many places are the central unit is the family unit. So in the suburbs, everybody has their own individual house and there's a family and they live there. But in New York City, there's a lot of single people. There's a lot of younger people move there. And then, like you were kind of saying, they're looking there to create their dreams, to make things happen. And the result of that is that everybody needs, we might say, family, community, a sense of connection, people they can rely upon. And you see people really finding that within the center so that they create these strong connections that eventually maybe become some of the most important friendships and most reliable friendships in their life. Because, of course, now I've been there a long time, so I'm seeing people go through life, I'm going through it with them. And when somebody gets sick, maybe they don't have their birth family, like anywhere near, but they have their Sangha family. They have their the community of friends within and people look after each other, and it's really wonderful to see, actually. And then even when people die, then the Sangha is on hand to assist them at that time, and it's been very inspiring and beautiful to watch, because we've seen people really have some amazingly peaceful and I would say blessed transitions, deaths.
Yeah. So is that why you're saying that these friendships are most reliable? Because people do look out for one another.
They really look out for each
times.
other. Yeah.
That's a I think quite a unique thing to find, especially in the middle of the city.
Well, I think I agree, and I think that's one reason why people, there's the teachings. We say, right, within Buddhist practice, we say that there are these 3 objects of refuge. You go for refuge to Buddha, you go for refuge to the guidance of a teacher, basically the Buddha, and the blessings of a Buddha. You go for refuge to the Dharma, the actual teachings themselves, and the experience of the teaching that you get through practicing. But the third leg of that refuge, object of refuge that characterizes Buddhist practice, is Sangha. And Sangha is the community of practitioners, past and present. Because the fact that what we're practicing has been practiced for 2,500 years, and that there's this sort of lineage of experience that's been transmitted down through the ages, gives present-day practitioners a lot of confidence, It still exists in this world because it works. It's been working for 2,500 years. But that's one aspect of Sangha. The other aspect is your present-day fellowship, your present-day practitioners who function to inspire you by their example, to assist you, to help you. And you are also part of that. You become Sangha for others, So we're helping one another. And Sangha is such an important refuge. And I see that so clearly manifesting in the center. And, in terms of what's interesting, just the word center, a center.
Yeah.
Not only is it becomes a center of their interactions in life, it becomes a center in terms of their interaction with themselves. And it also keeps them centered.
Triple.
You know what I mean? Just in terms of
especially in New York, in such a busy
Well,
life.
because New York, like I was sort of expressed when I first arrived there, I would sort of get exhausted by it, because the energy is so high and so constantly swirling around you. In those days, it really was the city that never sleeps. Now, post-COVID, it kind of sleeps. You used to be able to go out at like 11 or 12 and you could find food wherever. Now it's like, it's closed? What's going on? But it's probably going to revive,
Maybe at some point, yeah. So when people come to the center in New York, I guess that's what they are kind of learning, how to learn about compassion, inner peace, lasting peace, and then integrate that in their daily lives.
For sure.
Yeah. And so do you have any examples of your students where you could really see that evolution of a person that came in, was just a busy New Yorker, their life were hectic, and then without changing their lifestyle, they were able to integrate the teachings and actually help to come to this more balanced state of mind, as you have said before?
Well, probably hundreds of examples. For me, one of the key parts of the teaching that I feel is just always so important to emphasize is what we call Buddha nature. Because these days, it seems to me, in connecting to people, talking to people, connecting to myself, that people are very, very conceptual. They're very much up in their heads. Thought. And so much of it is revolving around worry and regret. So regret about the past, feeling unhappy about the past, things they did, things they didn't do, things that happened to them, things that they did to others, so forth. And then projecting into the future catastrophically, as in what could go wrong, what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens. And so a lot of anxiety, and if you check, all of that is going to be revolving around, or we might even say anchored in, a relationship to themselves as fundamentally somebody who is overwhelmed. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling that they can't handle it. If this happens, I won't be able to handle it. If this person rejects me, I won't be able to handle it. So if they're grasping at themselves, and as Buddha explained, we're all grasping at a self in a limited way that we believe is our real self. Actually, it's just an idea, and we just happen to have clutched at it very tightly, and then we've made that the centerpiece of our identity. I can't handle stuff. I'm not good enough. I'm insecure. I'm hurt, whatever it may be. A bit of a cocktail of all of those, maybe. We clutch at that. And so when people come, and even if they're like hearing teachings saying, you can practice patient acceptance and practice love and practice compassion, what happens is, people will bring that self-identification to their practice. And so they'll start thinking of themselves maybe as a practitioner, just not as a not good enough practitioner, an insecure practitioner, a practitioner who's worrying about what happens if I don't get better, like that. So, do you see what I'm saying? So they bring this kind of self-judgmental attitude into their practice. And that means that on the surface, they can look like a real practitioner. But internally, they're still struggling with themselves. And now they've brought the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, the practice of Buddha's teachings, into that as another thing to worry about and feel unhappy about and use to put themselves down, So that's one of the things that I've always just found very helpful to emphasize, because if you read Geshe Kelsang's books, he's constantly reiterating again and again and again, we all have this extraordinary potential in our heart. And when you allow your mind to settle, there it is. Some peace, some love, some kindness, some compassion. It's there below the surface. And what you want to do is access that and then recognize this is my nature.
But just in the same way as, for example, the disturbed states of mind are changeable, why would we believe that that's our nature more than our anger?
That's a very good point. And there's some very good answers. That's where to me, this simple breathing meditation or just allowing your mind to settle is so helpful, because when you do that, it settles naturally into a peaceful state. It doesn't settle naturally into an agitated state. Just like, when you stop shaking water, it settles. If you stop shaking the mind, it settles, and there's peace there. So that's indicating that, peace is natural. And that becomes key to recognize that when I'm meditating, I'm tuning into my nature. I'm not fighting my mind. And, from my own side, because that's definitely a struggle I went through, where I felt like meditation was a battle.
Yes.
Like it was me on the side of good, on the side of peace and happiness and love and compassion, battling what felt like my nature.
Yeah.
My insecurity and my not good enoughness and my anger and my hurt, and somehow, some days the good would be a little bit on the upside, and some days the delusion would be a bit on the upside. But it wasn't relaxed, because I wasn't trusting my Buddha nature, my pure nature that, Geshe Kelsang and all the lineage teachers over the ages have all expressed that is our nature. So does that make sense? That the unhappy minds, they're all grounded in the misapprehension of yourself and reality in general. Ignorance, attachment, anger, so forth. They're all distorted states of mind that cause us to relate to things in a way that does not correspond to how they exist. Whereas when you're peaceful, when you're kind, when you're loving, that's you connecting to reality. That's you aligning with the truth of things. So that to me became a really important thing, to help people recognize that their nature is peaceful and pure. And if you tune into that, then suddenly these extraordinary states of mind that Geshe Kelsang is expressing in the books that Buddha explained, we can attain, begin to feel possible. Oh, you mean I can develop a stable experience of peace and happiness? I can develop a stable experience of love, a stable experience of compassion. If you feel like you're putting the peace on top of agitation, you're putting the love on top of the what about me mind, I'm not really loving, then there's tension. And you're never fully relaxed. Whereas if you feel like you're actually, the peace, the love is my nature, then you kind of look and go, so if I just connect to that and start nurturing it by applying the various techniques and meditations, it's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And so suddenly I wouldn't say suddenly, gradually, but there are certain moments when it comes through quite strong, like, I think this is possible. I think I can change profoundly. Because I remember when I first encountered the books, the first book, when I arrived, I think Geshe Kelsang was just publishing his second book, Clear Light of Bliss. So there was just Meaningful to Behold, really. And Meaningful to Behold is all about being a bodhisattva, who is someone who is pervaded by the wish to attain enlightenment, motivated by universal love and universal compassion. What a beautiful concept. But when I first read it, it was like, that's beautiful. Has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
You know, I am a messed up student. You know, this has nothing to do with me. But when you start connecting to the pure nature and your potential and allowing yourself to identify with that, then you start thinking, oh, that book was always for me. It just was that I wasn't in the right frame of mind to recognize that Geshe Kelsang was speaking to my Buddha nature. He wasn't speaking to neurotic me. Neurotic me is a version of me that isn't real. You know, why would he speak to something that isn't real? You know, he's speaking to the bit of me that's the truth, you know? So, yeah, so I really always try to emphasize that so that people really connect to the fact that this is all truth. This is reality. This is possible. And so there have been so many occasions when, you know, people have just really expressed to me, this has changed me deeply. And they will then reiterate how it has influenced their family life and how much their family appreciate it. Just the other day, one of our long-term students passed away, old age, and I was able to do the special practice we do for the recently deceased. Just right after he passed away, I arrived and sat by his bedside and was able to do the practice with some of the other practitioners, and his wife and his sister were there. And they were just both telling me how much connecting to Buddha's teachings, to Kadam Dharma had helped him. How he had suffered from depression throughout his life. And once he met our, Buddha's teachings and started practicing, how it had just transformed his outlook completely. His sister and the wife were both kind of in tears expressing this. That's one story of many. And it's not like he never got depressed, but he never stayed there very long. He now began to find his way out of it. And, he was such a wonderful man who was helped so much at the center and so on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it requires quite a lot of faith in the beginning to be able to identify with the less neurotic self,
No.
No?
No, I don't. I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make. They'll think that, oh, you're talking about Buddha nature. Well, that's something far off. To me, it's literally the opposite. It's the most obvious thing if you give yourself permission to shut up. I sometimes call it the shut up meditation. Technically, it's the turning the mind to wood practice that was taught by the great teacher Shantideva, 1,300 years ago, and Geshe Kelsang has taught many times to just hold your mind still as if it were inanimate, not engaging with anything. So I call it the shut up meditation, as in you've already shut up externally, hopefully, but it's internally, but not repress. It's not shut up. It's just let go. Yeah. It's just disengage. Thoughts happen, but you just disengage. But if you do that, it doesn't take long, actually, for the mind just to kind of go down a little bit, kind of settle. And it just needs to be a little bit of peace. I mean, so many times, because I lead it often at the center, but it was in particular one time, a man came up to me after I'd led it, and he just said, because I'd been doing some other preliminary meditations for a while, so I hadn't done this particular one for a while, and he just came up to me and he said, that meditation, that just changed things. And that's the experience I have often, that if you give people that ability to settle, and then within that to recognize, oh, there's a little bit of peace here, and that's arising naturally. I didn't put it in. I just shut up. that's arising naturally. So because it's arising naturally, if I focus on it, it's going to grow. So now you're connecting to your potential. But also you just help people to feel that there's peace in their heart. And anything you say after that goes down so much more smoothly because they're not caught up in the resistance and the crazy turmoil of the mind and, worrying about themselves. It's just like people become very, very open. So it's kind of the opposite. It's actually easy to access. Of course, the habit is you're going to go back to your old self and start going, what about this and what about that? I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. So you just need to visit it regularly. But it's not like a leap of faith. It's actually just observation. Experimentation.
And it's within the experience of oneself.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. To give people an experience so that Buddha's teachings are not theoretical, but experiential, and then to build on that experience. I guess
the question then stems, the one that I asked just now, stems from intellectual understanding. Yeah, I might agree with you. What you're saying seems logical. I might have this potential within me, but if I keep it as a logic, then I will be waiting for that self that is peaceful and quiet to appear.
Right.
But I guess naturally, if you don't do anything, it doesn't appear, right? You have to apply some effort to access that experience.
Yeah, you do. But the effort is a bit of an anti-effort. It's counterintuitive to us to shut up. It's very counterintuitive. And initially, when Geshe Kelsang first introduced this meditation, and in fact guided it at a festival, I misunderstood. I misunderstand everything to begin with. And I definitely misunderstood because he was like saying, turn your mind to wood, or sometimes he would say like a stone, inanimate. So for me, I kind of, I don't know what I was thinking because it clearly not very thinking very clearly, but I took it to mean like repress, it doesn't work, as opposed to just disengage. And it's just like a hack, like we talk about like a biohack or whatever. It's a little mind hack to just shut up and let your mind go still. And then there it is. And then to allow yourself to stay there. I mean, that's a big problem for us.
Yeah.
Because we just like to talk about stuff. Even if we're alone, we like to talk about stuff. Sometimes, Instagramming or whatever. But just internally, it's like, oh, look, a little bit of peace, blah, 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 as opposed to, let me just enjoy it, deepen my feeling of it. But the one thing you mentioned also about effort is the thing is, that experience of, say, when you come home from work and you give yourself permission to sit down, even if just a minute, and there's that feeling where you kind of go into the chair and you go,
yeah,
Buddha nature. Because in that moment you shut up ever so briefly and you allow yourself to just have this moment of letting go. And there's a moment of peace there. Even sometimes a good feeling there.
Yeah.
Like, Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what you want to do is learn to recognize that. In my experience, and this is sadly as true of New Yorkers as anybody, but we're not very good at enjoying ourselves. Even though people move to New York to enjoy themselves, they're too busy thinking about the next enjoyment.
Yeah. And so to follow up from this, how do we also deal with our desires on a daily basis? I had a memory now sitting in the tube, down in London, going back home after work, and just what you say, thinking, oh yeah, I will do this, and maybe I'll go to my favorite restaurant for a ramen. And in this space, when your mind is like, that's the pleasure I want to experience. That's the thing I want to do. Another place, maybe a meeting, maybe I hang out with someone, maybe I'll watch some Netflix, maybe my TV show, like all of those. This is just so much noise. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Skillfully. The key thing, as I see it, is the recognition, the basic recognition, to quote Geshe Kelsang, the real source of happiness is inner peace. So that at least you know where real happiness lies. So, and that's, again, where just doing a bit of breathing meditation or letting your mind settle, or having a moment of kindness or love, like towards your dog or your cat. I've just recently been just watching, because a lot of people with dogs around here, and just watching them walk their dog. And it's quite lovely to see a person walk their dog, because what you see is that they're actually in a state of love for their dog, and the dog is reciprocating. They've created this energy,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're kind of walking their love, And it's kind of beautiful to see. That's Buddha nature. It's something that expresses itself quite naturally in numerous ways. It's a peaceful mind. Love is a peaceful mind, Attachment, which often comes with the love, unfortunately, is not peaceful, and it has some clinging and grasping and causes suffering. But the love itself is always pure. So if you know that, if you know it, and that takes a while, you have to think about it again and again, and you have to have, unfortunately, because, some people, they can just hear a teaching, I guess, and go, okay, it's all true. But most of us, we learn through experience, we learn through trial and error. And so, for example, even as you expressed it, right, from the vantage point you're in right now, you're looking back and going, that's just a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And yet we still do it. We still do it, which is interesting. And it's really something worth asking ourselves, well, why do I still do it?
There's hope. There's hope there.
Well, I think there's both hope, and I also think there is this sense, what you expressed, that the inner peace is going to require effort. It's going to require some effort. And so what we learn, because it's going to be a process, but what you want to learn is that to get better and better at allowing yourself to get into a good mind, connect to some virtuous, compassionate, loving, wise mind, generous mind, and then learn to bring that with you to your enjoyments. It's not about, I'm not going to go out on
Eat
the town
ramen
and
ever
enjoy
again.
myself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's about, and this is a big part of our practice, transforming enjoyments, learning to experience enjoyments in a pure way that's actually in alignment with your spiritual training, your practice. Personally, I think, and maybe this is because I live in New York City and teach in New York City, but I think it's true across the board. I think it's such an important practice because we do like to enjoy ourselves. And if you feel that there's a sort of separation between your spiritual life, where you're goody two-shoes, and then your enjoyments, which you're secretly hankering for and you're going to go for, that's actually dangerous. It's actually dangerous, and it can, lead to unhealthy attitudes towards yourself and towards your activities and towards others. Whereas what we want to do is to understand, no, I can practice training my mind, connecting to a peaceful heart, connecting to kindness, compassion, wisdom, connecting to blessings, pure energy, in the context of enjoying ramen, or even watching a movie. Geshe Kelsang talks about how, a movie can become a Dharma teaching, teaching you about impermanence and suffering and compassion and so forth. If you check, those lessons are always going to be available. Life itself is a teaching if you look at it in the right way.
Well, I hope New Yorkers are going to benefit further and further from having you as a teacher. Thank you so much for today's conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot, Agnes. Thank you.
Thank you.